I'm Carly Shank, Assistant Director of Operations at the Uis Performing Arts Center at the University of Illinois Springfield. Previously, I sat down with our founding director, John Dale Kennedy, and right now I'm pleased to continue that process by having with us today Bob Vaughn, who served as director of Sangamon Auditorium, including the facilities of Sangamon Auditorium and the Uis Studio Theater, from 2006 until his retirement in 2017. And we are so glad to be able to capture this interview as a part of commemorating the first 40 years of the venue, a milestone that has just passed in the last few months. So thank you for being here, Bob.
Well, thank you, Carly. It's my pleasure, really.
So glad to still have you here in the community. And before we started rolling, we were talking a little bit about John Dale was here for 23 years. And when he left, we had a few years with service of some other individuals, Sue Lynn, who served as director for a couple of years, and then a longtime staff member, David Taylor, who served in an interim capacity until we could get native son, Bob Vaughn, in the door here and get rolling again with the same kind of strategy, or very similar strategies that John Dale had utilized, and have another long timer. So,
well, I really preceded John Dale, and with the university here, I worked in various capacities at the downtown campus as when the vice chancellor for vice president for business and finance. I also ran an offset press here out on this campus.
And this is because you are native to Springfield.
I was, yeah.
And you were one of the first graduates of the Master's Community Arts Management program.
Indeed.
Here on this campus.
I actually started here. I was attracted to the university by a theater director that they had hired from Guy Roman, Guy was a former dean of the Vieux Colombier in Paris, and had come to the university from Beloit College, but he had a long career of working in the underground during the war and so forth with Jean-Paul Sartre and so forth. But anyway, Guy had decided to do Marat Sade, the play Marat, and I saw the notice that he was going to do it here, so I came out to the first call and found out that he didn't have the orchestra. He was going to do this in the cafeteria on a series of platforms in a space about this size of space. In fact, it would fit very nicely, the various platforms in this space. But in any case, I did that, and I ended up doing like 30 shows, and then 2 professional seasons with the Sangamon Repertory Company, downtown Springfield, and out at the fairgrounds one year.
And that was also under his leadership.
That was under his leadership. And I was building a lighting grid up in the Leland Hotel ballroom with Unistrut. When Dave Cinema approached me, I was up on the up in the rafters there, and Dave said, well, Guy suggested that maybe I'd talk to you about to find out whether you were interested in arts management. And I just kind of went like, I was ready to go back and get my MFA in theater at the time. And I thought, well, I'll come and talk to you. And so I came, made an appointment, went to his office, talked about it. He described it. He had been here from the National Endowment for the Arts. He was the Assistant Director of State and Community Operations, which then became the unit that made block grants out to the states back in the day. But in any case, had the regional coordinators and so forth. So after talking to him, classes here started, I think, just a few weeks before SIU in Carbondale, and where I was headed to do theater. And
you were that close.
I was that close, yeah, 2 or 3 weeks. And so I started attending classes, we had money from the William H. Donner Foundation in New York. We were going to conferences. We were meeting people. He was bringing people in from all over the world in to do community forum. We were working with local arts organizations and so forth. First year of the program. Second year was an internship. And the intern
and what years were
hooked.
these?
I was hooked. This was 1973. Yeah. And I was just nailed with it. I just loved it from the very beginning. I thought, no, this is perfect. So I continued, and there were 8 of us in the class, the first class, I think. 2 of us graduated out of the 8. The second year of the program, we did internships, and my internship I selected was I had 3 options: Scottsdale, Oklahoma City, and Taos. So I chose Taos, New Mexico. And so I worked at the Taos Art Association for half a year, and half a year for the New Mexico Arts Commission.
So here's this very young university, because Sangamon State was, I mean, even today, Sangamon State is young. UIS is young by university standards. So it was very young in the 70s. And this community arts management program that you are one of the first couple graduates of is coming out of this university that doesn't even have a performing arts center as part of it, though there's artistic activity happening on campus and in the community. When you were first doing the theater with Guy Ramon, that was not in a capacity, you were not an SSU student at that time.
I wasn't, but I went back in and claimed credit for this after the fact.
Okay.
There was a Guy. And because I did, in the cafeteria, we did Marat-Sade, and then I think we did 2 weekends of Marat-Sade, and then I did the lesson, in ESCO, the lesson, which was a bear, was really kind of a tough piece.
Yeah, these are not Oklahoma Fiddler on the Roof kind of shows.
Pretty rough
for
stuff.
sure.
The lesson in the bald soprano in a co-bill. Then by that time we moved downtown to the Leland Hotel ballroom, but and that's where we did the Crucible. We did a whole raft of different shows. I won't go into all of that, but
and so you go to New Mexico for your internship, and you start working in this field, and it just immediately whisks you away from Springfield to all sorts of other places.
Taos was magical, and then Santa Fe. I got to Santa Fe, and the director had a nervous breakdown. They saw him in Florence in sandals and a beard. They say they never did find the guy. I don't know where, but the basic state agency grant application was due for the state of New Mexico. So I wrote the plan from the previous plan and discussion with various people out in the field in New Mexico. Esther Bro-Kahn and I did. And then later, Esther, as a thank you, I think, involved me in a project that the governor had decided to recognize a local artist there for New Mexico. Hadn't recognized her work at all, and so we organized an exhibit for Georgia O'Keeffe in the state capitol at Santa Fe, which was absolutely amazing. It wasn't her best work, mind you, but it was kind of pulled together. But I can remember coming to the reception, and as this young guy, just Esther says, "Come on over, Bob. Come over. I want you to meet somebody." So I came over. And he said, "Bob, I'd like you to meet Georgia O'Keeffe," and I just kind of went, wow, Georgia O'Keeffe. Wow. So anyway, the magic of Taos and Santa Fe and it was just glorious. And from there, I won a management fellowship in Washington D.C. at the National Endowment for the Arts. And so I spent the summer of '75 in D.C., which was again magical. I had never been to D.C., which was absolutely glorious. And from that point, I actually I had been doing the basic state final reports. And I got to Alaska, and I just went, they're doing all of that up there? What? I had no idea, no concept of what Alaska was. So as sure enough, here comes a job description across Alaska, from Fairbanks. They had created an organization in '65 that was because each state had to have a state arts agency in order to get money from the endowment at the time. So they created what was called the Alaska Association for the Arts. So they hired me, and I took off in a wool overcoat and leather-soled shoes.
I have heard this story several times about arriving at the airport.
They cracked open that in February at Fairbanks. They cracked open that airline door, 55 below, and I just went into the hangar, and they greeted me with a parka at that point, and housing and so forth. So that was pretty spectacular also. 7.5 years in Alaska. So. And
your wife, also from Springfield, had the same experience arriving in Alaska.
She got there in the summer.
She got there in the summer.
Yeah,
okay.
In June. Yeah. That was a different story in June, but she was in a film up there. She worked as a hairstylist, and she happened to be there during the North American dog races in the spring in March. But anyway, that's another old story.
So you move on from this community arts management program here to some of these fantastic opportunities around the country. You eventually land in Lincoln, Nebraska, where you spent more than a decade, I believe.
I came back, and I wanted to be from Alaska. Was too far away. We had kids and grandparents and relatives, and we wanted to get closer. But we didn't want to be in the middle of it, mind you. So I said, well, all right, look, I'm going to, I'll find something. And I found a job with the city of Jasper, Indiana.
Remember that one?
And the Jasper Community Arts Commission. And there we got the Governor's Award for for local government support. And I had a great time there as well with that. But I was about 11 years there also, 10 years, 11 years, that territory. And then I got the job over at the Lead Center. And from the Lead Center, when I had applied for a federal grant and had a site visit, Romelyn Tillman came in and did a site visit. And she told me that they had created, that there were new performing arts centers, one in Lawrence, Kansas, and one in Lincoln, Nebraska, Lead Centers, that were being built, and showed me some of the material. And so when the job came available, I naturally applied. But I had been in the top position. There I went in at number 2, kind of, at the Lead Center.
So, because the Lead Center is a major university presenter, lowercase and uppercase, the way we talk about major university presenters.
$5.5 million operating budget, which is a different scale than I had been dealing with. But and right away they put me into dealing with all the Broadway and of course all the pop stuff as well. And I kind of understudied the various. Charles Bethea, who really came over from Arizona State, had worked for College Jennings Rogensack at Arizona State. So I kind of understudied him and kind of learned the requirements of the top position while I was there. And eventually I got more and more responsibility as time went on. And so but again, there I was getting into 10, 11 years, and I saw John Dale I used to see him at national conferences and things, and I'd always ask him, how's Springfield, how's this going? And he would always tell me, and he'd ask me what we were doing, and I'd show him the program, and he'd say, that's the exact series I did last year.
Sure, yeah. No, it's you have definitely continued the tradition that John Dale started. But as I said yesterday when I was talking with John Dale, none of these organizations are a cookie cutter of any other in
no.
terms of how they are financially structured with the university. You know, it's not the equivalent of a McDonald's franchise that you take and import to these different universities.
Well, an example might be that when we needed a crew for a yellow card crew for a Broadway show, we just the call would go to the union. The union would fill the
not here in Nebraska. You're talking about,
no.
Yeah.
It's a different world. There were many things that were considerably different. There were some things that were similar, but no, it was a different world. And so when this became available, my parents were here, and they were getting into their 80s. I have siblings here.
And your wife's parents were here
the whole
also,
family. And so I kind of kept an eye on this.
Mm-hmm.
And when it became available, I decided, I had a long discussion with the staff there in Lincoln and said, nah, I'm going to just make the attempt anyway, and let's see what happens. But I had this premonition for a couple of years that this was going to happen, and it wouldn't go away. It just kept coming, that this was going to happen. So, and it did, So and I had a great time here.
Well, and so when you came back here, you hadn't lived in Springfield, hadn't been in Springfield except for visits with family since the mid-'70s.
That's right. Yeah, this was 30-some years.
And so now it's 2006, and did you find the community that you were expecting here in Springfield?
The campus was a whole different thing. Dave Cinema sent me. He put together a reunion of the community arts management program at one point, and he contacted me in Lincoln and told when the transition was going, when the University of Illinois was taking the Sangamon State.
Sure, 95.
He said, well, your stock went up. I said, what? Well, what are you talking about? He says, well, the University of Illinois now, and we're going to have this reunion. You ought to come. I couldn't come back. When I finally got back here, I just went, oh, wow, it is a different world all of a sudden. It was all these old metal buildings over here. That was all there was, and they'd begun the library, and that was
right.
Everything by the time I left.
Yeah. So you had been aware, because you knew John Dale, that the auditorium had been built, opened in 1981, and that kind of programming was finally happening. Had you ever been here for performances?
I came back and did Jonathan Katz put together some type of a summer. I was doing a lot of professional development things. In fact, all through my career, I was doing a lot of that. And he put something together, so I came back and did that. That particular, it was about a week worth of sessions with various different in arts management. See, I was still thinking community arts management at that time, but now I'd gotten quite a distance from what the initial concept of community arts managers and animateurs in the French tradition. It become a whole different.
Earlier you mentioned you were one of the first two graduates, and I know who that other graduate is.
Angus Randolph.
Oh, I was remembering Grace was one of the early students.
She went part-time.
Oh, okay.
So she hooked me in, though. I danced in her recital in Copper Corn Ballet.
So that was Grace.
I didn't look the same then.
Grace Luttrell Nanavati, Director Emeritus of the Springfield Ballet Company, who was also a part of that community arts management program.
One of the class members, yeah. And the second year, Mike Dunbar came in, who was a high school buddy of mine. So, that was interesting to find out that Grace was in there. And then when I heard that Dunbar had come in, I thought, wow, the reputation for that arts management program really expanded, and it received a lot of prestige over time. As I'd heard about it and some of the graduates from the program there were many graduates all over the country that I had interacted with, and so that really was an important program for for the university at the time. I was kind of sad to see it go away because I think
in the earliest days of my work, by that time, community arts management had been taken in as part of the Masters of Public Administration program, which is how I earned my degree. So it changed a little bit, and it wasn't born of those same Dave Cinema traditions. But you're right, at the national conference level, I was always having conversations with people about, oh yeah, that graduate program that's there. I often send, interns, undergrads who are interested over to Sangamon State, to that thing that's happening there in Springfield. There's real truth to that in our field.
It's amazing. Putting my next set of glasses on here, I can imagine with the development of athletics here, and the role that the evolution of the various campus departments and the improvements with the auditorium and this venue, I can imagine that there can be an opportunity going forward for really a venue management kind of an opportunity. A program in venue management, and it would include both assemblies, public assemblies, management. Florida Atlantic got the big one initially, but there's still a need for that, and that could happen. And it would help you guys out considerably to have those interns available.
Well, and though you served here at a different time, you and John Dale are very similarly aged, and had sort of some similar professional experiences at the same time. And John Dale was talking a lot yesterday about just building the understanding that a host institution needs to have in order to do the day-to-day operations of these kind of facilities. And you're right, that can extend to public assembly facilities beyond the specifics of theatrical stage systems and that kind of thing. And we're still, even all these years later, kind of piecing that together. And I think that kind of speaks to the time between John being here and your arrival, and we didn't lose much ground, but we lost a little bit of ground by losing that level of professionalism.
It was in rough shape.
So let's talk about you arrive and what are you faced with, and what were the big things that you accomplished?
This venue right here, right today, does not even look like it belonged to this building at the time. The level of maintenance, the lack of care really was nasty. It was pretty nasty by that time, and the finances were a mess. I finally just had to call in an audit and clean it up, and we got people from all campuses and kind of take a look at it. Then I kind of laid out my vision of what I needed. And got the help. The University of Illinois was very cooperative in that regard. But that arts management program was gone, and I really hated that because those interns are really that's really a good thing to have.
Yeah. Let's talk about this space for a moment. So this space, the Uis Studio Theater. We talked about it a little bit yesterday about soccer practice happening in this space in its earliest days.
They told me that. I never saw that happen, but that was part of the lore.
So it had never really been fully realized as the build, and it was in part the vision of Guy Ramon that there be a theatrical space, but he was gone from the university by the time this started to happen.
The guy had a heart attack. Yeah, it was. I'm sorry to hear that, but I did visit with Fabienne, his wife, when they lived over by where I grew up. So
so when this the facility fully opened, Studio Theater was not being managed in the same way and as a part of Sangamon Auditorium. It was being managed by the folks managing the conference center, renting out rooms for events and that kind of thing. And shortly before your arrival is when it came over to finally be managed by the department managing
Yeah.
Sangamon Auditorium.
Yeah,
And we hadn't really been using it yet.
I had a staff member that was kind of a conference person that came over with it. It didn't work out terribly well, but it took me a while to figure out what I could do with the existing space. But it was a tough space, and Lord knows why they designed it the way they did. But initially, I think the auditorium itself was an academic space. It was not. It was like 1,100 seats or something like that, I think.
Yep, just a lecture hall it was going to be.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That's nasty. So, what I brought and what I brought some notes here that what I brought from Lincoln really, and working at the Lead Center and being involved with the major university presenters was a programming focus, and what I talked with the staff during staff retreats and so forth about was that whatever we programmed needed to demonstrate some level of technical virtuosity, right? It needed to make emotional connection. It needed to have stimulate the intellect, and then it needed another useful criteria was it reached honorific status.
One of my favorite phrases from Bob
that's
Vaughn,
a tough
honorific status.
Honorific status. Has it been around long enough and recognized as being quality by those experts, quote experts, that has it stood the test of time? Has the work stood the test of time? And does it demonstrate some innovative aspect some way or another? Does it contribute to balance and allow us to become more sustainable, if you will? We needed to have variety. And then it's a question of looking at the community and saying, what do they already have, and what do they not have? So I'm building up to an observation here, that, and then I wanted the programming to build strategic connections with academic units, if I could do it, to further cement our role as part of the academic community, because I felt that was important, not as an auxiliary, really. You got to have that. So, in consideration of those things, I'm going to ask you what you think when I booked, what medium did we really book the most titles in during?
Oh gosh, is this a quiz?
Yeah, that's a quiz. Yeah.
What artistic medium?
Yeah. Like we have world music and dance, and we have theater, and we have classical music, and we have these different things.
When I think of the genres of art forms that we presented and continue to present, but music is a really general category. We probably have more music events than any, but that's everything from classical music to the Willie Nelson concert to all kinds of stuff. So I think of our 2,000-seat hall primarily as a Broadway space. That's
55 different titles.
55?
55 different titles.
In your 11 years?
In those 11 years, yeah.
And that means some of those titles multiple times.
Oh, yeah, and multiple number of performances.
Yeah.
And different ticket prices, and what's the most expensive?
Was Teddy Bickell in Fiddler on the Roof this time, and then it was Actor A in another time?
When you divide the cost by the income from tickets, the highest price ticket was probably a Les Mis thing at one point, because the fee was like $430,000 or something like that, plus whatever. And so, but I didn't just evaluate it based on that kind of thing. It was because that changed people's lives, did it not?
It did.
Yeah, I thought it did.
She's sitting right here. That person, that Les Mis is the reason.
Number two. What's the second biggest one? I'm going to tell you. Okay. World Music and Dance.
Was it really?
Most titles. 15% of the titles were world music and dance, and that's because the community didn't. A lot of this community didn't have the wherewithal or the experience in traveling and experiencing world cultures, and so it was an effort to try to make the world a little smaller and people talking to each other more carefully.
And John Dale pointed out yesterday that. He did not at all complain about the size of 2,000 seats, although it was often a discussion during your tenure that, man, wouldn't it be great to have like a 700 or 800 seat hall to put some of these events into, and not the big cavern of the 2,000 seater.
We answered that question. Why aren't we? Why is there only 700 people here?
Right. And it has always been so difficult to convey to the audiences, no, this is fine. We have a different expectation for this event than we do for the Willie Nelson event, and this is a great-sized audience for the event.
You need the production capability, but you don't need all those 2,000 seats.
Well, dance is the best example of that. People who are just casual observers would have no understanding of the technical needs of a real well-honed, well-designed dance company. And they need this stage facility, even though we may not need 2,000 seats for it.
So Broadway, world music and dance, rock and blues.
Oh, you're the blues guy.
Well,
for sure.
The object there was to reach the baby boomers who grew up with rock and roll and knew that, and they had the time, they were retiring and had the money to be able to buy tickets.
And the same events, sometimes the same artists that they stood on the track at the state fair to see years ago, they are perfectly happy coming into an air-conditioned theater and being comfortable.
This is a fabulous. The fact that that designed into this hall was the hard wall and soft wall capability was a stroke of brilliance. They actually did some really good work to find out what the design should be. I don't know who did they use. Was it Jarrett Boys? Do you know that? I think it was. Jarrett Boys out of Chicago, I think, is who they worked with on the thing.
We can ask John later about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. So then after rock and blues, we have Americana, then variety, including comedy.
Who do you consider an Americana?
Well, I include country, country and folk and, and into that. And then variety. Now, I'm not talking about... this is not some kind of scientific analysis,
sure.
but I just wanted you to be aware that there's a method to the madness, if you will. Then family events, and then classical. Then now here comes, after all of that, here comes the classical rep, classical music. Then there was special projects, which we'll talk about, but that's a different strategy. Jazz, theater, modern and tap, and finally ballet at the bottom. And ballet was 2% of the bookings. But no, the only opera I was able to do was just the Metropolitan Opera Rising Stars. But New York City Opera was out by this time. And so
that was a real change that in my earliest days with John Dale, there was still some touring opera, and there just is not
gone away
anymore.
Gone away.
Some of those other ballet and classical music, I think, speaks to the perception of competition in our small market.
Well, they were doing a good job with it. I thought the dance community and the classical music community was pretty strong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought, I don't need to do that. Really.
So we saw those audiences, but in the capacity of seeing the Springfield Ballet Company and the Illinois Symphony Orchestra, certainly.
And then we were able to do the big ideas, the fun.
There you go. There's a Bob Vaughnism.
The big ideas. The big ideas, listen to the river, right, with all the partners and dealing with the Illinois River and those glorious images in this space as well. and Invoking the Muse, right? And Out of the Blue, Journey, the video game. I missed that, but we booked it anyway. And then the Sun Rings project, which I really had a good time with.
So some of those big idea projects were collaborative efforts that you came up with, working with a professional artist to craft something that was for us here at UIS in Springfield, utilizing local strengths, utilizing Mike Dunbar, your artist friend and community arts management friend, and bringing his large-scale public artworks to life with some music and
some modern music, which wasn't really a Mike Dunbar thing, but we made it work anyway. But now our ability to work with other campus units to involve them in other community organizations where we could, it wasn't always possible. We had some that really did work very well.
What your first or second year, and we did the political project,
Public Accountability and Free Press.
Public Accountability and a Free Press.
Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we had the LA Theater Works doing the Pentagon,
Pentagon Papers.
Pentagon Papers, yeah.
As a radio play.
Yeah.
And brought some guest speakers in to this campus and worked closely with
at the time, it kind of was about revealing that there really weren't any weapons of mass destruction and so forth. So it was a great project with the papers. And then we did an early birthday party with A. Lincoln. And then we did a 100-year birthday party with Barrett Deems. Barrett Deems played drums for Louis Armstrong and Jack Teagarden and a bunch of people from Springfield. And I remember as a kid riding the bus out to the fairgrounds, and Barrett Deems was the only other passenger on the bus. And Barrett Deems played the bus for me. He gave me a personal concert by playing the bus. He carried his damn sticks everywhere, that's the way the guy was. Anyway, then our Marvin Hamlish project and Metropolitan Opera, Rising Stars, Cameron Carpenter, where we brought that huge electronic organ into the theater. People always threatened, if you have a performing arts center, people always threaten, wouldn't you really like to have a pipe organ in here? No, but we can do it without having to have the interference with our production capability. Bass Track Live, and then my favorite was Taj Express.
Oh yeah,
Taj Express from the Bollywood, amazing Bollywood production. It was just a lot of fun. Now the failures.
Oh, we're going to talk about the failures?
We got the failures.
Oh no.
I couldn't book. I couldn't come to terms with
Bobby McFerrin.
No, Bobby McFerrin, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Joffrey Ballet. I tried. I mean, we were doing it. The Lion King, which I thought I had wired and ended up in Peoria. Yeah. Alison Krauss and Ringo Starr. I just couldn't get them. So I tried everything I could. We presented Alison Krauss in Lincoln, but I just didn't get any serious kind of. By this time, she was out with Robert Plant or something, and it wasn't working. So
yeah, I think, and she had appeared here earlier on.
Probably the same time.
But I think it was pre-Robert Plant.
I think we booked a lot of similar. John Dale and I probably booked a lot similar things. So, and then I have another list of Afrocentric programming, because I thought this is really important. Springfield, this is Springfield, Illinois, and I grew up here, and I came back to Springfield, and I thought there needs to be some sort of bridges and awareness of what's going on with various cultures involved. So I'm not going to list all of these things. There were, but there were 7% of everything we booked were Afrocentric kinds of events. Everything from Wynton Marsalis to Blind Boys of Alabama and everything in between.
Now, you didn't really get back to, when we talked about this space, I was ready to get to the fact that you started programming professional artists in this space.
Yeah, that was because of it could seat somewhere in the neighborhood badly,
about
but
300.
It could seat about
Yeah.
300, here in this space. So we were able to do everything all over the sun. That's why it was the kitchen sink.
It was the kitchen sink series.
It was,
and it was a lot of music because that could fit into this space. And we could also be a little bit fluid about the audience expectation, how many people we'd have for those events. And so we were just selling a general admission ticket, and then we could adjust the layout of the space according to the number of people we were expecting. But it was tougher, but we did it a few times to put something more theatrical in this space, which was not yet ready for real theater productions. Although we had UIS theater in here, but they were more installing something, not just loading it in that day and doing a theatrical production.
Yeah,
so
when Eric Thibodeau Thompson was over at in Lincoln also back in my early days. I remember him
Sure.
from it was probably more in Brian's age, but. In any case, they really struggled. They made it work, but it was not an easy space for them to work in. It had some challenges. So,
in order for them to really see the vision of a set design through in this space, they really got to take it over and reinvent the space when they use it. But I'm so glad that we had that kitchen sink series and started to get audiences beyond the campus audience into this space and starting to have the expectation for the kind of quality performances that could happen in this space.
The format for the kitchen sink series is also something if God forbid that there is another pandemic, it is something when it's a larger hall that you can where you can, in that intermediate recovery period of time, where you can distance people, and you can do with the number of seats you have in the big hall. You could do.
Oh, you could take an artist that you were planning for down here and go upstairs.
And you could build a interim series around it because you can book it. You could book it close in. And instead of going completely dark, depending on what
we've also spent a lot more time in this space during this year because we outfitted it with the cameras that we're using today, and we streamed a lot of the faculty recitals of UIS music and some other campus events. And this is a really great space to be able to do that in, and it was less possible to consider using the upstairs space in that same way. Still possible, but we could be a little more installed and in control of things here.
You have and to Brian's credit, you were able to get the concession back under where it belongs in control of the venue, to be able to make that really work and redesign the lobby to make that happen. That's a great thing.
There are a lot of things that happen over the course of a life of a university venue that are just the circumstances of that moment in time that make it possible, as well as the leadership that's helping to make it happen. But the lobby you mentioned, Brian Reeves arrived as our director shortly after the student union had opened, something that this campus had sorely needed. And all of a sudden there's a space over there that can host banquets And previously there was no space like that. So how during your tenure, was it twice a week that there'd be some kind of dinner happening in what essentially is the Sangamon Auditorium lobby, but the campus has just commandeered it?
Yeah. It reminds me of my $1,000 parking space at the Lead Center on home game day.
Oh,
I lost my space every home game day to the boosters. What are you going to do?
sure.
And then sometimes there were major amounts of money in a campus environment with a development office that go over here, and
Yeah.
you just got to play ball. I mean, that's the way it goes. We were successful in getting some of it, so which was a good thing. And then the other thing that right now I don't know what you're doing in parking, but it's always been a strange netherworld.
Yeah, we talked a little about
kind of
parking
thing.
yesterday with John, too. It has always been a strange world.
It doesn't
Also,
make sense,
we talked so much yesterday with John about driving the 7 miles to get out here, that it is so hard for the community some segments of the community to feel like they're welcome out here. I don't know, that place is out in the cornfield, it's such a destination. You don't just drive by it the way you drive by a downtown
I
arts
lost
center.
track of that. When I first got here, that was a real thing.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going out in that cornfield to do that. But I think we weathered through a lot of that. There are still audiences of folks that can't drive at night.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this from working with the volunteer corps, that you have to do some workarounds to make it accessible to them. They'd love to be out here, but they can't drive at night. They just can't do it.
And some of that same group, maybe they can drive at night, but they're just not sure where they're going to park when they come here. And that's always been a concern too, because they just want that Walmart parking lot.
I'm with you. I begged for the cornfield across the street, and the chancellor just shut me down immediately. She said, "We can't use state funds to do it, and any donated funds are headed another direction of necessity." So I didn't win that. So you'll be facing that for a while and trying to get them into the appropriate places there. Yeah.
We've talked about a lot of artists.
Uh-huh.
What other significant milestones of your tenure do you want to talk about?
Like I mentioned, the getting the money together, and getting the accounting, and getting the staff hired, and doing the staff retreat. I think I made some notes on that somewhere along here. Oh yeah. Handrails in the hall.
Oh,
there weren't any handrails.
yeah,
Scared me to death. I walked into the balcony and just went, oh.
and that had never dawned on me before, because from my perspective, I had been here 5 years, but I was in my 20s, and what's this guy talking about? Handrails?
Yeah.
Handrails? Yeah, there are no handrails. There was nothing. So while you were walking down, you would get in the back of the mezzanine or the back of the balcony. No handrails, nothing to hang on to while you walked steps down.
Even getting close to that rail was a little scary. Then I brought in Jay Glarum to do a workshop with the production people in the area, and that was a good thing. And then
rigging, specifically.
On rigging and in general. And also worked to improve the professional development opportunities for staff members, involving staff members, joining the Kennedy Center, and this was you doing most of the work on this, but getting that established and getting that partnership. Does that still go?
It does. It does.
Right,
it's been kind of a low year right now during the pandemic, but the Kennedy Center affords us the specific opportunity to have a really strong relationship with our Springfield Public School Districts.
Yeah,
I mean, we're glad to work with all kinds of school districts, but that's how we just stay most connected to our largest school district.
Yeah, and then working with community partners we talked about. We actually got a presenter's grant while I was here. It was not easy to convince the presenting program to give us a grant, but we were able to do that. And then we developed an agency plan through our considerable to staff retreats and so forth, the staff work in planning. We took back Broadway. When I got that's a whole story.
That is a whole story. But it's you were the guy to do it.
It was a pain in the neck, but it was not a fun thing, but it worked. And now that revenue stream was really important, and we weren't getting a fair amount of on the split really the way it was happening. So we had to take it back.
John had always had the university present Broadway directly. After John left, before you arrived, Broadway kind of went out the door, and a third-party promoter was involved in booking the shows and taking the profit on the shows, bearing the loss, but taking the profit.
There are advantages to doing that if you can get the numbers to work right, because of the economies of scale to be able to book it. Unfortunately, it became more a low-hanging fruit kind of thing, and so we changed it. So then we also upgraded the sound and stage lighting, and refinished the stage, rebuilt the stage.
You found a lot of things that deferred maintenance projects that just really had never had any care given to them. And
I left some for Brian.
Yes, you did. You did. It's true. It's true. They weren't all taken care of.
True,
but you balanced what needed to happen with the programming that you thought was important to the community, and you didn't want to throw that out the window just so that we could make the next lighting upgrades. But every year there were things we put in the budget that we planned for that we'd have to look at. I always appreciated how each and every month you would look at where we were at and where we thought we would land, and you never just shrugged your shoulders and said, well, we'll just wait and see how this year ends. No, you were examining our deficit reduction plan each and every month and trying to make sure that we made the choices that could enable this organization to be what you wanted it to be and what the community wanted it to be, while also being responsible.
When I was involved in the business track of the major university presenters program, it occurred to me when we examined the way that the bigger presenters around the country were handling their assets, it became obvious to me that wealth is the thing that gave them the greatest freedom. It wasn't the budget, it wasn't the university support, it was the wealth of the unit that mattered. And then there was
when you say wealth, you mean endowments.
I'm talking, like the reason that some of your Ivy League is sitting there and able to do the kind of programming they do. But then I noticed that the University of Michigan had moved outside the university structure, outside of all the constraints of human resources, a lot of the human resource and a lot of the other headaches that normally happen in a large university, were able to get outside that kind of thing and operate more efficiently, I thought. And but back to my original observation, and that was, you never know what's going to come down the pike. You got to get some money in some in pockets of in general reserve some way or another, and leave it alone. Keep it there, because things are going to happen that you can't plan for particularly well. And sure enough, you guys were there.
Sure enough,
you
2020.
were in a spot where you had to deal with it. So I'm hoping that we had enough that you were able to get through this and can see the other side of it now. We're talking about going back out in the fall. I'm hoping.
We are hoping as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're anticipating that. We are planning as if that's the case.
It'll take a while
we'll-
to catch it to get back up, catch back up again. But with be frugal about it and be strategic, and you get back in it and work. Are you still doing artifacts or some event software of some kind?
I'm kind of reinventing that right now.
Yeah. Are you looking at a different package, or are you still using artifacts?
It's called a package of documents that we're working on. But we've exhausted a lot of topics today, and we can certainly do more of these sessions. You can get back in touch with me on things we didn't cover. Is there anything in your mind right now that you really wanted
the celebrity list?
Oh, celebrity list? Okay.
Tony Bennett, right?
Oh, that was a good one.
Marvin Hamlish, Brian Wilson, right? Frankie Valli. I can't list them all.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Willie
Frankie's
Nelson.
a good one.
Willie Nelson. John Mellencamp. Hal Holbrook.
Multiple.
Garrison Keillor, right? Those were kind of there are others. Peter Nero. There are others. Rock and roll guys and so forth. But those were the kind of the mainstream performing arts celebrity kind of list that we were able to do, which is because you had initially asked me what what really connected with the audience most effectively, and we had many discussions about the logic behind presenting these people and what the measuring success.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? All dollars and cents? Well, no.
Sometimes
not even the most important thing, unfortunately. But it happens. But when you can actually see somebody's life change because of their experience with that event, like when I first started up in Alaska, and we had the kids before they mainstreamed all the kids with challenges. They were all in one school called Birch School. And I brought in a harpist from Tiburon that we toured around the state. We put her out there. She did a recital. Then she would invite the audience up to play the harp, to strum the harp. We had a little girl come up in a wheelchair who could not opened her hands to strum this harp. When I saw that happen and saw that change, the lights came on, and I just said, "Holy cow! This is really a spectacular thing to affect people who are not being reached in a lot of different other ways." So anyway, that's why we do what we do. I guess.
I often think of the Monday morning discussions you and I and others in the office could have about what the event that just happened that weekend meant and what we picked up from it, either for us personally or for other audience members that we were connected with. And that would be just what we needed to just keep going onto the next event.
They still come back to me and say, "Why are we doing this?"
I would still come back to you and say that sometimes too. But
there's a logic to it, but it might take a while. Yeah.
But it was a great pleasure to talk to you today. It was a great pleasure to work for you for 11 years.
It was a great time. I enjoyed it too, and the staff was wonderful.
And it's great to have you still here in Springfield. And John both.
I'm really happy to see this continuing and evolving. So we'll see where we go from here. It's as long as we can. I don't know. So far, we're still here. So.
Well, it's like John said yesterday when I said we're happy to have you here, and he said I'm just happy to be anywhere. Right? That is a reflection of
every day you wake up, buddy.
That's right.
That's a good day. Yeah.
That is where we are in 2021 for sure. So thank you so much,
All right,
Bob.
Thank you for the discussion, for the invitation, and good luck going forward.